In the quiet, picturesque town of New Paltz, New York, nestled in the shadow of the Catskill Mountains, the sense of calm and safety was shattered in 2003 by an unspeakable crime. This wasn't the sort of tragedy one would expect in a community where everyone knew each other's name and the biggest concern of the day was what the weather would be like for hiking. But in the early hours of October 16, 2003, 22-year-old Lori Hacking, a bright, independent woman, vanished without a trace, leaving behind a trail of confusion, fear, and unanswered questions. Lori's disappearance would become one of the most shocking unsolved cases in the area, drawing attention from across the nation. Despite the tireless efforts of investigators and the local community, the search for her would uncover more than anyone could have imagined, and would leave a lasting legacy of heartbreak and disbelief. Lori Hacking was the kind of person who could light up a room. Growing up in New Paltz, Lori was well-liked, intelligent, and admired for her determination. A recent college graduate, she had spent years studying psychology at SUNY New Paltz and had dreams of becoming a therapist to help others. She was close with her family, particularly her parents, who adored her, and her younger brother, who looked up to her. Lori also had a strong circle of friends, many of whom described her as the glue that held their group together. She had a contagious laugh and a radiant smile that could brighten anyone's day. But it wasn't just Lori's personality that stood out. Lori was a woman who took her future seriously. She had recently become engaged to her longtime boyfriend, Chris Hacking, a man she had been with for nearly 4 years. They had met in college, where Chris was a star athlete and an aspiring sports psychologist. The two were inseparable and appeared to be the perfect couple, deeply in love, and full of plans for the future. The couple had even started making plans for their wedding, and everything seemed to be falling into place. Lori's life, it seemed, was on track. But no one knew that the seemingly perfect relationship she had with Chris was more complicated than it appeared. Behind closed doors, cracks were beginning to form in their relationship, cracks that no one, not even Lori's closest friends and family, could have predicted. The morning of October 16th started like any other. Lori left her apartment, which she shared with Chris, to head to her part-time job as a waitress. She had a routine. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. But by the afternoon, Lori had gone missing, and no one knew where she was. At first, her family and friends chalked it up to her being busy with work or just needing some time to herself. But by the time evening came and Lori failed to answer her phone or return any messages, worry set in. Lori's mother, Rebecca, called Chris, but his answers seemed vague. He claimed he hadn't seen Lori for several hours and didn't know where she had gone. According to Chris, he had gone out with friends and hadn't seen his fiancé since the morning. Something felt off. Lori was not the type of person to just disappear. She had no history of running away or cutting off contact with her family and friends. Lori's absence was unsettling, and the anxiety among her loved ones began to grow. By the time midnight struck, Lori had been missing for over 12 hours. Her family decided it was time to contact the authorities. The Ulster County Sheriff's Department launched an immediate investigation into Lori's disappearance. Detectives combed through her apartment, interviewed friends, family, and colleagues, and followed up on any lead that seemed promising. However, there was little to go on. No signs of forced entry into her home, no suspicious activity near her workplace, and no indication that she had taken any personal items with her, other than her phone. For days, the investigation seemed to stall. It wasn't until the police uncovered shocking evidence that the case took a dark turn. Detectives discovered that Chris Hacking had lied to them about his whereabouts on the night of Lori's disappearance. Surveillance footage from a local store showed Chris buying a bus ticket to New York City on the evening of October 16th, at a time when he had previously told investigators he had been out with friends. Chris was quickly questioned by detectives, but his answers became more and more inconsistent. He claimed he had been planning a surprise for Lori and didn't want to spoil it by telling her he was leaving for a trip. However, his behavior during this period was anything but typical. Family members became suspicious of his reactions, noticing that he didn't seem as frantic or concerned as someone whose fiancé had gone missing. As the investigation continued, it was revealed that Chris Hacking had been living a double life. His psychological profile began to show troubling signs of manipulation, deceit, and emotional instability. As detectives delved deeper into the relationship between Lori and Chris, they uncovered disturbing information about Chris's past. It turned out that Chris had been hiding secrets from Lori. He had been living off her money and had taken out several credit cards in her name without her knowledge. Moreover, he had been lying to her about his finances and his future plans. But perhaps most shocking of all was the discovery that Chris had been lying about his educational background. He had never actually completed the coursework necessary to graduate and had fabricated his entire resume. He was not the well-established professional he had made himself out to be, and it became increasingly clear that his lies had deeply affected Lori. Even more chilling was the revelation that Chris was not as devoted to Lori as he appeared. Evidence emerged that he had been involved with another woman, who had reached out to Lori's family after her disappearance. This woman claimed that Chris had been seeing her for several months, and that Lori had been unaware of the affair. The woman also provided details about a heated argument that she had witnessed between Chris and Lori shortly before Lori disappeared. This argument, according to the woman, had been about Chris's secrets and lies. Despite the unsettling revelations about Chris, the case still lacked solid evidence that could directly connect him to Lori's disappearance. That is, until November 5, 2003, when the body of Lori Hacking was discovered in a remote wooded area not far from her apartment. The body was badly decomposed, but the cause of death was quickly determined to be blunt force trauma. Lori had been brutally murdered, and the manner of her death suggested that she had struggled fiercely against her attacker. Forensic evidence from the scene pointed to Chris Hacking. Hair samples found near the body matched his DNA, and a weapon was recovered from a nearby creek that was consistent with the marks found on Lori's body. Police arrested Chris Hacking on charges of first-degree murder shortly after the discovery of Lori's remains. During Chris's trial, prosecutors painted a picture of a man so consumed with self-interest and control that he was willing to go to extreme lengths to protect his secrets. They argued that Chris had murdered Lori in a fit of rage after she confronted him about his lies and infidelity. His fear of losing his comfortable lifestyle and his carefully constructed image was said to have driven him to commit the unthinkable. The defense, however, claimed that Chris had been a victim of circumstance, pressured by the collapse of his relationship with Lori and his mounting debt. They argued that Lori's death was a tragic accident, a result of a heated argument gone too far. However, the jury didn't buy it. Chris was found guilty of first-degree murder, and in 2004, he was sentenced to 25 years to life. As the case came to a close, psychologists and criminologists began analyzing Chris Hacking's behavior. They identified a pattern of manipulation, deception, and narcissism that seemed to run through his entire life. Chris had used charm and deceit to manipulate those around him, particularly Lori, into believing his carefully constructed image. His complete lack of empathy for Lori, even in the face of her death, highlighted the extent of his emotional detachment. Experts pointed out that Chris had likely murdered Lori not because of any momentary emotional lapse, but because of his deep-seated fear of losing control. He couldn't let go of the life he had built, and in the end, it was his need for dominance and control that led to Lori's tragic death. The murder of Lori Hacking shook New Paltz to its core, leaving a community reeling from the realization that a person so trusted and loved could be capable of such violence. Her death prompted widespread conversations about domestic violence, emotional abuse, and the hidden dangers of seemingly perfect relationships. Lori's family and friends never truly recovered from the loss, but they vowed to honor her memory by raising awareness about domestic abuse and speaking out against the kinds of toxic relationships that can lead to tragedy. Lori's story became a cautionary tale for anyone who believed they could ignore the red flags of a relationship built on lies. As for Chris Hacking, he remains behind bars to this day, his legacy forever marked by the brutal murder of the woman who once loved him. His story is one of deception, betrayal, and an ultimate act of violence driven by a need for control, a tragic reminder of the darkness that can exist in even the most seemingly perfect lives. We hope that through sharing stories like Lori's, we can shed light on the hidden threats around us and help prevent future tragedies. Remember, if you ever suspect something is wrong, speak out, seek help, and protect yourself and those you love. Call to action. If you found Lori's story as moving and impactful as we did, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more real-life stories of crime, justice, and the mysteries that still linger. Your support helps us keep telling these important stories. Don't forget to hit the bell icon so you never miss a case. Leave your thoughts in the comments below, and share this video to raise awareness, because the more we know, the safer we can be. Thank you for watching. Stay safe, stay aware, and remember, the truth is always worth uncovering.